Success with Diabetes, Session 3, Part 1. In this session, we want you to walk away with a general understanding of nutrition. Eating is something we do multiple times a day, every day of our lives. Some of us spend more than half of our lives thinking about, buying, preparing, and eating food. But there's a direct relationship between the foods we eat and our health. But how often do we think about our food and how it affects our health in general? What we eat and how we eat our food becomes a habit that we develop over years or decades. Oftentimes, these choices are things our parents, grandparents, and family have all done their entire lives, so it's common for these habits to become ingrained in our lives as well. Food is such an important part of culture. Can you think back to a time where food wasn't involved in a celebration, gathering, or party? That's probably not possible. We celebrate with food no matter what cultural or family background you have. With that being said, we still want you to be able to enjoy food because it's so meaningful. Anyone, even people with diabetes, can eat anything they like as long as they understand how food affects their body and plan their meals accordingly. We've all heard of counting carbs. What are carbs? Carbs is another name for carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are sugar that our body uses for fuel. There are two types of carbohydrates, simple and complex. Simple carbohydrates are found in foods like white sugar or candy. These carbohydrates are quickly converted to glucose, which is transported through our body. Because this process happens so quickly, we can get a higher spike or increase in our blood sugar levels, meaning more insulin has to be released. Complex carbohydrates have fiber, so they take longer to digest. It takes more time for complex carbohydrates to be converted to glucose and absorbed into our blood. This means the sugars in our blood increase slowly. In general, most people plan to have 45 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per meal, with about 50% of daily calories from carbohydrates. However, people of different body sizes, ages, activity levels, eating habits, or cultural religious practices may alter the amount of carbohydrates in a planned meal. Most people with diabetes may experience great blood glucose fluctuations if they eat their meals not being mindful about the schedule and the carbohydrate amount. This may make their blood sugar levels unpredictable and harder to control. Carbohydrates also play a role in water absorption. If you eat too many carbohydrates, you can feel bloated. If you do not eat enough, you could become dehydrated. Also, since people with diabetes can have kidney damage, restricting carbohydrates and relying on a high protein diet with too little fluids can be dangerous to the kidney. This handout shows different drinks with their corresponding calories, teaspoons of sugar, and how long you need to walk to burn off these calories. It may surprise you to see that this 20 fluid ounce juice drink has the most teaspoons of sugar and calories of all the drinks here. Even more than soda. All right, let's pause here and play a game. Which item has more carbs? The main point of this game is to show that carbohydrates are deceiving. First, 1 cup of granola or 6 Oreo cookies. You can pause the video for a few seconds while you think. Granola does. Granola has 65 grams for 6 Oreos, which has 50 grams. Next, 1 cup of flavored fat-free yogurt, or 1 small 1 ounce bag of chips. You probably guessed it, flavored fat-free yogurt actually has more. Flavored fat-free yogurt has 70 grams versus 1 small chip bag, which has 46. Last one, 100% grape juice versus soda. Okay, this is a trick question. They have roughly the same amount, about 40 grams for a 12-ounce serving. We're not trying to say the foods mentioned above with higher amounts of carbohydrates are worse for you. Some of them have more nutrients than their counterparts. We just wanted to show you that carbs are hidden. It's important to look at the label to avoid any unpleasant surprises. Remember that we can balance our carbohydrates from 3 main food categories: grains and starches, dairy, and fruit. We will be talking more about each group next. Be mindful that carbohydrates can still be hidden in other food categories. Breads, grains, and starches are the first food group we'll talk about. Grains are a type of crop that include oats, wheat, and barley. Grains are composed of three layers: bran, endosperm, and germ. The bran layer is the outer layer that is rich in fiber and protects the seed. It also contains helpful vitamins and minerals, such as vitamin B. The endosperm is the middle layer that contains carbohydrates and proteins. The germ layer is the innermost layer that contains nutrients, antioxidants like vitamin E, B vitamins, and healthy fats. Grains can be whole or refined. Whole grains contain all three layers. Unlike whole grains, refined grains are processed to remove the bran and germ. Processing allows the product to be stored longer. When the grain is refined, fiber, iron, and vitamins are removed. Refined and whole grain bread both have roughly the same amount of carbohydrates, but whole grain bread has more fiber. So, how do foods act differently in our bodies when one has more fiber than the other? Let's do a small experiment to show how two foods get digested in our stomachs. We'll use orange juice to represent stomach acid. The brown piece of bread is whole wheat, while the white piece of bread is refined. After letting the bread soak for 5 minutes, we can see which piece of bread breaks down quicker. You can see that the white bread breaks apart very quickly and easily. This is because there's less fiber. The whole wheat piece breaks down slower. In your body, this demonstrates how fiber can slow the breakdown and sugar release process. This keeps you full longer and makes sure you don't have high spikes in your blood sugar. Even though each piece has the same amount of carbohydrates, the fiber makes your blood sugar go up slow. Another term that you may have heard of is glycemic index. The glycemic index of an item of food tells us how much it increases our blood sugar. The orange juice and bread demonstration we just did shows us that white bread increases our blood sugar more so than whole grain. This means that white bread has a higher glycemic index. This meal planner is also included in your handouts. This is just an example of the different food groups and amounts a person would eat in a day. Grains and starchy foods should make up 25% of your plate. Each person's meal plan may have a different amount, most commonly between a half cup and 1 cup per meal. These include foods like breads, grains, and starches. Non-starchy vegetables on our meal planner represent at least half of the plate, and it's definitely okay to eat more. This is roughly 2 handfuls. If you are cooking a meal that mixes ingredients, then half of the ingredients should be non-starchy vegetables. These vegetables are a great source of fiber and nutrients. Fiber is important to help slow the rate of sugar absorption. Fiber also helps you feel full so you don't overeat. A few tips in picking vegetables. Eat vegetables from all colors of the rainbow. Some vegetables are starchy, so they contain a considerable amount of carbohydrates. Examples are sweet potatoes, potatoes, squash, peas, and corn. For people with diabetes, it is important to count these starchy vegetables in the carbohydrate portion of the plate. When cooked, it's recommended that vegetables are prepared in a way that can preserve much of the valuable vitamins and minerals. Sautéing and steaming are examples of such cooking methods. Protein on our meal planner represents 1/4 of the plate. We can also use the approximate measurement of a palm size as a guide. Most of the time, we think protein mostly comes from meats, but it can also be derived from other sources like nuts, seeds, tofu, or beans. A few tips for picking proteins. The leaner the meat, the better. Lean meats have less fat and cholesterol in them. That would be white meats like breast meat of turkey and chicken, and seafood. Red meat would be beef and pork. Seafood is another option that can reduce the risk of heart disease. Fish also contains good fat. Nuts and seeds have protein. Remember to choose the unsalted kinds. Replacing high saturated fat red meat with nuts and seeds can also help lower the risk of heart disease. Beans, peas, and processed soy products like tofu offer lots of protein and other minerals that our body needs. These are great low cholesterol ways to get protein, but we must be aware of hidden carbs. These are a great source of protein, but some of them contain carbohydrates as well. Because of this, it is important to be mindful that it will count as a protein and carbohydrate. It's also important to remember that processed red meat can have added salt, which can raise your blood pressure. Egg white, low fat milk, and cheeses are also a good source for protein. There are many different types of fruits that are packed full of vitamins and minerals. The best way to eat fruit is raw and unpeeled to get more fiber. Fruits are very similar to vegetables, but they contain natural sugars. That's why they're so sweet. For fruits, the general amount would be about 2 cups per day. The dairy group contains foods that are made from milk products, including yogurt and cheese. Dairy is a good source of calcium, potassium, and vitamin D. Dairy can contain protein and carbohydrates. Here are some tips and things to watch out for. Low fat dairy products are the best. They have less calories and fat in them, which helps keep healthy levels of cholesterol in our blood. Due to the difference in fat content in various milk products, the effects of blood sugars may vary. Beware of hidden carbs in milk. In this table, you can see that of the 4 types of milk, whole milk has the least amount of carbs, even though it has the most grams of fat. When fat is removed from milk, it decreases the volume, but the amount of sugar and other components stay the same. Going through this fat removal process may change the carbohydrate amount in the milk, but it's not really a huge difference at all. Next is the fats and oils group. This group contains refined sugars, alcohol, and different types of oils and fats. Although it may sound strange, fat is an important part of our diet. Fats are an important source of energy and helps with the absorptions of important fat-soluble vitamins. Fats also help slow down digestion. The 2 types of fat are saturated and unsaturated fats. Saturated fats are mostly from animal origins, such as butter, lard, and bacon. Saturated fats are solid at room temperature. You can remember these facts by remembering that fat in our body is also solid. These should be consumed in moderation because they contain high amounts of cholesterol. People with diabetes also have a predisposition to increased levels of blood cholesterol, so they should be careful with how much they eat. Unsaturated fats mostly come from vegetable origins, with the exception of fish oil. Unsaturated fats are healthier for you. Some examples include avocado, fish, and extra virgin olive oil. Diets rich in unsaturated fats, such as the Mediterranean diet, help control blood sugar and cholesterol levels. Now we'll talk about sweets. Sweets are foods that have solid fats like butter and added sugar. Refined sugars like white table sugar should be avoided because they are high in calories and can increase our blood sugar very quickly and easily. Think back to the white piece of bread and orange juice demonstration. Processed bread gets absorbed quickly, so it can increase our blood glucose quickly as well. Creams and dressings made with eggs are high in cholesterol, fat, and calories. Items like mayonnaise should be consumed in small amounts. When deciding how much added fat or sweets to eat, choose to eat the amount no greater than the end of your thumb to avoid eating too many extra calories. Let's take a look at some examples. Just as a reference, 1 teaspoon of lard has 5 grams of fat. This slide shows how many grams of fat are in each of these food items. It also includes the equivalent amount of lard. Whole milk has 8 grams of fat, compared to 2% milk, which has 2.4 grams, and skim milk, which has 0.5 grams. If you get a hamburger with bacon and cheese, then that's 32.6 grams of fat. French fries have 18 grams of fat, which is almost the same amount of fat as a hamburger. And a slice of pizza from the Costco food court has 28 grams of fat. We've now gone over the different food groups we should plan to include in our meal. This may be a lot to remember, so you can refer to this handout as a general guide for how much dairy, fat, fruits, vegetables, protein, and carbohydrates you can plan for each meal. In the next video, we'll discuss food labels and how to read them. See you next time.